I always kept that room locked, not out of fear or superstition, but because some truths belong in silence. My name is Helen Ashford. I live just outside Savannah, Georgia, in a modest 2-story house tucked between moss-covered oaks and hydrangea bushes that bloom blue in the spring. The shutters are white, the porch creaks in the afternoon heat, and the mailbox still bears my husband's name, though he's been gone 7 years now. Our house was the kind where walls remember, where doors close a little slower out of respect, where the guest room, the one on the west side of the second floor, hadn't been opened in years. That room was my husband's sanctuary, and mine after he passed. The air in there is different still, thick, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest if you stay too long. Sometimes I'd go in when the grief got loud, not to cry, but to remember how it used to feel when his presence filled a room just by sitting in it. That room held the last echoes of his voice, the scent of cedar and pipe smoke still lingering in the curtains. His watch still rests on the nightstand, ticking faintly when the sun warms it. I never entered without a reason, never dusted the drawers, never moved the furniture. Everything stayed where he left it. His favorite chair by the window, the bookshelf with 3 loose slats, the oak dresser with its tarnished brass handles. I kept it all intact like a sealed chapter, because inside one of those drawers, hidden beneath a false panel, lay papers that were never meant to see the light of day. And now, Ava wanted to stay there. "It's the only one with that gorgeous morning light," she said sweetly, her fingers dancing across the lace curtains I hadn't touched in years. So peaceful, peaceful. That word clung to the room like perfume over mildew. I smiled, but inside something tensed. Not fear exactly, something older, deeper, like a whisper from a locked door. Ava was new to our family. She had married my son Matthew only 3 weeks ago in a small civil ceremony in Chicago. He called me the night before the wedding, bubbling with excitement. "She's special, Mom," he said. "She sees me, really sees me." That last part caught my breath because men like Matthew, kind, bookish, and soft-spoken, long to be seen, and women like Ava, they know it. She arrived at our house with 2 designer suitcases and a smile that could win elections. Tall, elegant, perfectly manicured. Her hair fell in smooth waves around a face made for camera angles. Every move she made was graceful, calculated. She wore charm like silk, effortless, expensive. Still, I wanted to believe, wanted to think my son had found joy. God knows he deserved it. But there was something. A pause before every compliment, a flicker behind every thank you, as if she were checking her reflection in your reaction. When she hugged me, her arms stayed stiff. Her perfume was too intentional. Not a signature scent, but a disguise. That first evening, she insisted on making dinner. "Something simple," she said, "just to feel useful." We ate on the back porch. Chicken piccata, lemon rice, and a salad so symmetrical I was afraid to ruin it. She asked polite questions, laughed when appropriate, even helped with the dishes, sleeves rolled, nails pristine. But never once did she ask about the house, about my late husband, about the room she now called her own. That was the first clue. Real people ask. They're curious. Performers stay on script. Later, she sat with Matthew on the sofa, her head resting gently on his shoulder as he showed him old photo albums. She smiled at all the right memories, prom pictures, camping trips, birthday cakes. But when he opened the album from the year my husband took on the state corruption case, the one with headlines and formal events, she looked away. I caught it. A split-second look. Recognition, then retreat. That night, after Ava went upstairs, I sat in my old rocking chair by the front window. the one that creaks every other sway. I watched moths tap against the glass and thought about my husband, how he used to say that some people enter your life like wind and others like a draft you never noticed until it chills you to the bone. The air outside was thick with summer, heavy and slow. I sat for hours just breathing and thinking about that room, that dresser, those papers. I waited until the house was silent. Then I turned off the lights and listened. Upstairs, the faint sound of floorboards, Ava's steps, light but deliberate, then drawers opening, a pause, then closing again. Not the kind of shuffling you do when looking for a place to put socks. No, it was systematic, rhythmic, purposeful. It wasn't curiosity, it was reconnaissance. I didn't move, didn't speak, because I needed time. Time to confirm what my gut already whispered. Ava wasn't who she said she was. The next morning, I called my sister Martha. She answered after 2 rings, her voice still laced with sleep. "Helen?" "I need you to do something for me," I said. She didn't hesitate. "Name it." "I need you to look into someone. Quietly. Her name is Ava Collins." A pause, then the familiar sound of typing. Martha had always been the curious one, a retired librarian who never let go of the scent of a mystery. To her, information was just another form of armor. "Give me 48 hours, she said. I hung up and stared at the empty teacup in my hands. The house was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind seemed to tiptoe that day. Ava was in the garden, trimming a lavender bush that didn't need trimming. She knelt in designer jeans, the kind that never touched soil, and hummed a song I didn't recognize. It was too perfect, too pleasant. I watched her from the kitchen window. She didn't glance up once. That afternoon, she baked a pie, said it was an old family recipe, cherry and almond. When I asked where she learned it, she blinked for half a second too long before saying, "My grandmother taught me." Later that night, I found the recipe pulled up on her phone. The screen was still lit on the counter. Strike one. I started writing things down, a small notepad hidden in the drawer by the sink, a log of movements, phrases, looks, not paranoia, preparation. Monday morning, I saw her on the phone, standing on the porch, whispering. When I stepped outside with my watering can, she turned her back quickly, too quickly. Strike two. That evening, Matthew told me Ava wanted to host a dinner. Just a few neighbors. To show gratitude, he said. She stood behind him, smiling like a woman who already owned the room. I agreed, and that night I searched her room, not to invade, to protect. I didn't find much. Her suitcase was immaculate, clothes folded with military precision, makeup organized in trays, jewelry box locked. But beneath her pillow, I found a small notebook, just one word written inside. Will. Nothing else, just that. The next day, Martha called. Her voice was taut. "Helen, she's not who she says she is." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Her real name is Nadine Keller. A silence fell between us. She changed her name 2 years ago. Before that, she worked as a private nurse in Austin, then married a retired banker in Denver. Both men are dead, sudden illnesses. Both changed their wills within months of meeting her. The families contested everything, but she vanished before charges stuck. My knees buckled. I sat down. She's a professional, Martha continued, "and now she's living in your house." My hand shook as I thanked her and hung up. Outside, Ava was pruning again. Same bush, same smile, same silence. And now I knew. This wasn't just about Matthew. This was about me. Because Ava, or Nadine, wasn't just looking for love or stability. She was looking for access. And if she ever found that hidden panel in the guest room, well, it would all be over. My hand trembled as I set the phone down, not from fear, from the quiet, cold rage that only comes when someone threatens your child or your dead husband's legacy. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I planned. The first thing I did was walk upstairs. Ava's door was open, her perfume lingering in the hallway, something expensive and artificial, like lilacs dipped in calculation. She wasn't home. Out with Matthew, likely at the coffee shop in town where she always smiled too brightly at strangers. I stepped into the guest room. The floor creaked the way it always had. 3 beats after the second step, sunlight slanted through the lace curtains she had admired. The room looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Now it felt invaded. I walked to the dresser, opened the bottom drawer, lifted the worn copy of Wuthering Heights, moved the false bottom. There they were, the sealed affidavit, 3 notarized letters, and the small black USB drive. My hands hovered over them for a moment, then withdrew. Still safe, still untouched. I closed the drawer and stepped back, heart steady. Then I picked up the phone again. I dialed a number I hadn't called in over 6 years. Julian Wright answered on the 3rd ring, his voice still crisp. "Helen?" "Julian," I said, "I need you to come, discreetly." A pause, then, "Does this have to do with the Keller woman?" I blinked. "You've heard of her?" He exhaled slowly. "I've heard rumors, nothing concrete, but I'm on my way." By nightfall, he was on my porch. Tall, lean, gray hair neatly parted, tweed blazer, leather satchel slung over one shoulder, and the kind of eyes that miss nothing. He hugged me briefly, not out of affection, but out of habit, then stepped inside. "She's in your house?" he asked, setting down his bag. "She's sleeping 20 feet from state-shaking evidence," I replied. He didn't flinch. That night, I showed him everything. The guest room, the drawer, the hiding spot, the documents. Julian inspected them with the care of a museum curator. He nodded once. Still clean. For now. Then he opened his satchel and began unpacking. A discreet security camera, a motion sensor, a sound-activated recorder the size of a coin. We worked in silence. By midnight, the room was wired. By dawn, the real surveillance began. Julian stayed in the guest cottage behind the house, posing as an old friend visiting for a few days. Ava met him over breakfast. She was charming, effortlessly so. Julian smiled through it, but I watched her closely. The way her eyes flicked to his ring, his shoes, his wristwatch. She cataloged people like inventory. "She's casing you," Julian said that evening. "I know," I said. He looked at me. "You ready to go to war, Helen?" I looked out the window, where Ava sat in the garden again, pruning the same bush. I've been ready since she first smiled at me. By the second day of surveillance, Julian had captured hours of silent, calculated movements. Ava's nightly routine didn't waver. Always the same time to bed, same robe, same soft footsteps. But what stood out was the stillness in between, like a predator waiting for a weak branch to crack. She's planning something, Julian said, scrolling through time-stamped footage. But she's cautious, too cautious. She's done this before, I murmured. We needed a trigger, a test. So I made dinner. Sunday afternoon, I invited Ava and Matthew to dine in. I told them I'd be making one of Henry's old favorites, chicken and rice casserole with rosemary and caramelized onions, a family tradition. Ava lit up. "Oh, that sounds lovely. I'll bring wine." She arrived early, too early. She offered to help, but only lingered in the kitchen doorway, eyes drifting not to the food, but to the shelf where my estate documents were stored. Strike one. We ate on the porch as the sun sank low. Matthew chatted about work. I smiled. Ava complimented the casserole, called it comforting and old-fashioned in a good way. When I asked what herb she thought I'd used, she hesitated. Thyme? Strike two. It wasn't about the food. It was about attention. Real people remember details when they care. Predators only remember angles. She chewed too fast, asked questions about my daily routine, laughed too hard at nothing. Then, halfway through clearing dishes, she reached, casually, too casually, for the red binder on the sideboard, the one marked Estate Notes. She brushed it, touched the edge, saw me watching, and smiled. Strike three. The test had worked. Julian, watching from the security feed, gave me a silent nod through the window. We didn't need to say anything. We had our proof. Not legal yet, but psychological. She couldn't help herself. That night, I stayed awake with the footage. I replayed the hand, the smile, the flick of her eyes. "She's getting ready to move," Julian said. "Then we'll be ready first," I replied. The next day, I locked the binder in a fireproof safe in my bedroom, but I left behind a decoy. Inside it, blank paper and a single sticky note. Nice try. 2 days after the casserole test, Ava made her move. It began with small things, questions posed with too much innocence. She asked what time I usually went to bed, whether I ever locked my bedroom door. She even mentioned a friend who worked in estate law. "They're so helpful," she said, slicing a peach, "especially when things get complicated in a family." Julian raised an eyebrow at that. We were sitting in the guest house, watching clips from the hallway cam. "She's softening you," he said, lining up the next step. And that step came the very next evening. It was just after 9 p.m. Matthew had gone to meet a friend for drinks. Ava said she had a headache and would be staying in. I feigned tiredness and went upstairs early, leaving the downstairs dark and quiet. But I didn't sleep. I waited in the hallway closet, the door cracked just enough to see the stairs. At 9:41, Ava crept down, barefoot. She didn't hesitate, didn't check the rooms. She went straight for the decoy binder. She opened it slowly, reverently, as if it might sing. Then froze. Her eyes scanned the pages. Blank. She flipped again. Still blank. And then she saw the sticky note. Nice try. Her face changed. It dropped, the smile gone, the mask slipping. She slammed the binder shut and looked around the room like a wolf caught mid-prowl. For a moment, she stood motionless. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket, pulled out her phone. We caught every word. "They moved it. I don't know where, but she knows. I think the old man's friend is here. No, I'm not staying long. Just give me a day or two. I'll fix it." She hung up, her hand shaking. That's when I stepped out of the closet. She gasped, "Ava?" She turned, trying to conjure a smile, but it came out crooked. I was just looking for something. We stood in silence, the kind that weighs more than sound. Her eyes darted the hallway, the door, the camera she hadn't seen in the corner. Julian stepped inside from the back entrance, calm, steady. She looked between us. "You've been watching me." "I've been protecting what matters," I replied. She clenched her jaw. The calm was cracking. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Julian chuckled softly. "Actually, we do." Then came the knock. 3 firm raps on the front door. Agent Torres. She stepped in with a badge and a quiet authority that needed no announcement. "Miss Keller," she said, dropping the act. "You're under investigation for attempted fraud, coercion, and identity misrepresentation across 3 states." Ava, Nadine, didn't fight. Her shoulders dropped as if the weight of her own game had finally landed on her. They cuffed her. And just like that, the strike was over. But the real battle had yet to begin.
2 days after the casserole test, Ava made her move. It began with small things, questions posed with too much innocence. She asked what time I usually went to bed, whether I ever locked my bedroom door. She even mentioned a friend who worked in estate law. "They're so helpful," she said, slicing a peach, "especially when things get complicated in a family." Julian raised an eyebrow at that. We were sitting in the guest house, watching clips from the hallway cam. "She's softening you," he said, lining up the next step. And that step came the very next evening. It was just after 9 p.m. Matthew had gone to meet a friend for drinks. Ava said she had a headache and would be staying in. I feigned tiredness and went upstairs early, leaving the downstairs dark and quiet. But I didn't sleep. I waited in the hallway closet. The door cracked just enough to see the stairs. At 9:41, Ava crept down barefoot. She didn't hesitate, didn't check the rooms. She went straight for the decoy binder. She opened it slowly, reverently, as if it might sing, then froze. Her eyes scanned the pages. Blank. She flipped again, still blank. And then she saw the sticky note. "Nice try." Her face changed. It dropped, the smile gone, the mask slipping. She slammed the binder shut and looked around the room like a wolf caught mid-prowl. For a moment, she stood motionless. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket, pulled out her phone. We caught every word. "She moved it. I don't know where, but she knows. I think the old man's friend is here. No, I'm not staying long. Just give me a day or 2. I'll fix it." She hung up, her hand shaking. That's when I stepped out of the closet. She gasped. "Ava." She turned, trying to conjure a smile, but it came out crooked. "I was just looking for something." We stood in silence, the kind that weighs more than sound. Her eyes darted the hallway, the door, the camera she hadn't seen in the corner. Julian stepped inside from the back entrance, calm, steady. She looked between us. "You've been watching me?" "I've been protecting what matters," I replied. She clenched her jaw. The calm was cracking. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Julian chuckled softly. "Actually, we do." Then came the knock. 3 firm raps on the front door. Agent Torres. She stepped in with a badge and a quiet authority that needed no announcement. "Miss Keller," she said, dropping the act, You're under investigation for attempted fraud, coercion, and identity misrepresentation across 3 states. Ava, Nadine, didn't fight. Her shoulders dropped as if the weight of her own game had finally landed on her. They cuffed her. And just like that, the strike was over. But the real battle had yet to begin. The house felt different now. Not louder, not quieter, just aware. Like a place that had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. I walked through the room slowly that Monday morning, brushing my fingertips along surfaces I hadn't touched in years. The old piano, the windowsill and the stairwell where Matthew used to line up toy soldiers, the chair where Henry used to read every evening. The guest room door was shut again, locked, not out of fear this time, but out of ceremony, like closing the final page of a chapter too heavy to reread. Julian had gone home. Taurus, too. The footage was in the hands of the Bureau now. The investigation would expand. Maybe other families would finally get answers. Maybe someone else wouldn't fall into the same trap Matthew almost did. And Ava, Nadine, would finally be seen for what she was. I made tea, sat by the window, watched the wind lift the edge of the porch rug. For the first time in weeks, there were no eyes watching me from across the table. No polite lies, no curated charm. Just me and the quiet. I thought about what had been saved. My son, my late husband's legacy, my home, and what had been lost. Ease, innocence, and some sliver of my son's belief in people. But I knew something else, too. I hadn't just survived this. I'd prepared for it. Henry used to call it silent armor, the way certain women carry strength like old letters in their purse. Not flashy, not loud, but ready. I didn't feel victorious, but I felt whole, and that was enough. As the sun rose higher in the sky, I stood and opened the window, let the breeze in, let the past out. Because even though the guest room would stay closed, my life would not. Some women grow quiet with age. Others, we sharpen. If you've made it this far, thank you. This wasn't just a story about fraud or legacy or danger hiding behind a perfect smile. It was about vigilance, about listening to your instincts, even when the world tells you to hush. It was about protecting what matters, even if it cost you comfort, peace, or someone you thought you loved. If someone is watching you too closely, asking the wrong questions, standing just a little too still when the room is loud, pay attention. And if you've ever been made to feel small, helpless, or dramatic for raising a flag in your own home, remember this. Your silence is not surrender. Your caution is not weakness. And sometimes the quietest women carry the sharpest truth. I kept the guest room locked, not because I was afraid, but because I knew some secrets are safer guarded, and some women, we don't just endure, we outlast. And if this story spoke to you, if you felt seen, understood, or simply entertained, don't forget to like the video to support the channel, leave a comment, your thoughts matter. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Every voice counts, and every shared truth strengthens another.